While exploring the wilderness in Red Dead Redemption 2, it is easy to stumble upon one of the many environmental events. You may find a man whose horse just died on him, someone who got bit by a snake and is depending on you to be able to survive the ordeal, or you may spot an animal, dangerous or not, that catches your eye. It is noteworthy to mention that Red Dead Redemption 2's world is so filled to the brim with those activities that you might trigger or come across some of them even when just going from point A to B while trying to continue the main story. While coming across animals, weapons and missions that are all categorically listed in the Progressions tab in your menu, it's safe to say that a lot of players thought to themselves, what if I just try to complete it all? After all, the fact that the Progression tab leaves huge empty spaces where the animals you didn't find yet should be, seems like the game itself is trying to tempt you into completing it. While streaming Red Dead Redemption 2 on Twitch, I've personally met a lot of people that told me they had completed the game 100% and underlined their statement further by giving me a crazy amount of suggestions and tips on how to handle situations in a better manner. When asking them if they usually try to get a full completion on other games, they mostly denied doing so. Yet Red Dead Redemption 2 managed to somehow grab their attention to an extent which made them spend multiple hundreds of hours to get said 100% completion. And while I personally love collecting platinum trophies, which you get for completing every last achievement for a game, I could never understand how someone would willingly spend hundreds of hours on getting multiple 100% completions on the same game. After having earned said platinum trophy, I am now going to explain you why, at least in my opinion, you shouldn't bother trying to get a full completion on Red Dead Redemption 2.
Thinking about the more or less 300 hours I've approximately spent on getting a platinum trophy for Red Dead Redemption 2, I found it reasonable to break the game down in two main components that help me make up my mind on why I would not recommend anyone to go for all the achievements or trophies in the game. A huge reason why Rockstar games all have an extremely low completion rate, even among trophy hunters, can be explained by the fact that the games require multiple hundreds of hours to complete and are mostly not dependent on skill but rather patience and grind. You might have heard how people often belittle incredible feats that pro gamers achieve by pointing out the amount of time those people invest into games to peak at. A common sentence is, if I played this game for the amount of hours that this guy did, I'd be a pro too, or even better. While the comparison might seem completely off topic, I do think there's a big correlation here, and said bluff is, at least to some part, relatively true. To further elaborate, let me give you my view on difficulty in video games and what it takes to become very good at them, or, for the context of this video, how to get those very hard trophies. In my opinion, difficulty in video games can often be broken down into just two elements: skill and persistence. While your average video game often has a mix of those two, especially when it comes to achievements and full completion, there are others that definitely push one of those two factors more than the other. For example, the Souls games Cuphead and Super Meat Boy are all video games that are notorious for their difficulty because it seemingly takes quite a bit of skill to beat the average level or boss in those games. A wrong move, a reaction that is a split second too late, or the false interpretation of an enemy's attack pattern can often cause you to lose the fight, and, depending on the game, hours of progress you've made up to that point. I personally think that skill in video games like these has to do mostly with reaction time and the ability to read and become used to an opponent's pattern. To visualize what I'm talking about, let's look at a boss battle from Cuphead that I personally found very impressive. As you can see, there are a lot of things moving around the screen at a very fast pace that the player needs to keep track of. The game is pushing the reaction time, pattern recognition and general track keeping of the player to the limit. One could argue that the pure and only factor that counts here is skill. As you can see, Kaashuni is doing amazing and will eventually beat the boss. While he is an excellent player and beats lots of difficult games on a regular basis, I can guarantee you that not him, or anyone else for that matter, does this right off the bat. And this leads us to the second factor that hugely influences the difficulty of video games: persistence. No matter how good someone is at any game, it is basically guaranteed that persistence was a factor in all of the raw skill you see. It is important to mention that when in combination with skill, the amount of persistence someone had to show to get to the point he is may vary from person to person, but is certainly a component in each skillful player's journey. In the same way that there are games that require the player to have a lot of raw skill, there are also games which expect players to have an ungodly amount of persistence. And to finally get back to the topic this whole video is about, Red Dead Redemption 2 definitely is difficult to complete because it falls in the latter category. To explain what I mean by that, let's look at some actual challenges you will have to do to get the full completion in Red Dead Redemption 2. Let's focus on just the very tedious ones and ignore those that only pose a minor inconvenience, for the sake of proving a point. Red Dead Redemption 2 requires you to get a gold medal on 70 story missions. While the task itself is indeed tedious, it is in my opinion justifiable if you consider that this can be looked at like a hard difficulty setting, which the game does not have. While some of the tasks are hard to fulfill, it is rarely to a level that will take you more than 3 or 4 tries to beat it and complete additional goals. All of this would be fine if it were not for one specific problem. You're totally bro, Papa. I know you're giving me a hard time, but like you don't mean it, of course. And you're helping me a lot with all your tips. It's amazing.
Arthur,
What the fuck?
you're slipping in your old
What the fuck happened there, guys? You saw that? What was that? Get up, get up, get up, get up. What was that, Papa? Have you seen that shit? You know what? I need to restart that. Now it's messed up.
What's wrong?
What happened there, dude? What happened there?
What are you shooting at?
Glitches. Red Dead Redemption 2 is notorious for the amount of detail and attention they put in their game, and is arguably the one game that currently sets a very high standard for others to meet. Not to beat a dead horse, but this is especially true when you compare to the recently released Cyberpunk 2077, which tried to be as detailed as Red Dead Redemption 2 was on its launch. They failed miserably. While the amount of detail is commendable, even Red Dead isn't free of glitches. While most of them are completely harmless and don't influence the gameplay at all, there are some, specifically in regards to gold medal missions, that make the experience a lot more annoying than it would already be, implying it would work perfectly. To give you an example, this is a recording of me starting a mission and playing through it. My personal experience is that as soon as you die, it is wiser to just quit and reload, because there's a 90% chance that it will tell you that you messed up one of the requirements even if you know you did not.
As you can see, we're playing through the mission Red Dead Redemption, which requires me to get 7 headshots while covering Sadie, reach Abigail and Sadie within 1 minute after they both get caught, and get 70% accuracy overall. The last requirement is to not consume any health items whatsoever. To prove what I just said about the requirements completely glitching out on you, I will purposely die during the mission, and you'll see how it will tell me later on that I consumed health items. When the unedited recording you'll see will prove that I didn't do that at any point.
Another thing is that a lot of missions require you to finish them within a certain time frame. Some missions however start with a cutscene, and you logically want to skip that cutscene to save time. If you do so however, it may happen that the skip of the cutscene also makes the mission glitch out. Whereas if you don't do it in other missions with the same requirement, you're just not going to get the gold medal for being too slow. It is worth mentioning that no matter which of the 100 plus missions you look up on YouTube to find a walkthrough, there will be multiple comments talking about how something glitched out for them, or on the other hand, a comment trying to explain to you how to avoid a glitch and to solve the mission correctly. These comments usually get hundreds of upvotes, further proving that glitches are indeed an issue with the gold mission rankings. The very last thing I'd like to mention is that an average mission in Red Dead Redemption 2 is somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. You can imagine how annoying it is to finish one such mission and realize that your objective glitched out, having wasted 20 minutes of your time. Even when dying and now avoiding checkpoints, it is still annoying to quit the game, load into it again, and then load into the specific mission you messed up. The whole process of loading back into the game takes around 5 minutes, plus the 10 to 15 minutes your mission will take if done successfully. And see how this part of the game can get extremely tedious and drags on. Besides the tremendous task of getting 70 missions with a gold ranking that is further hindered through the glitches I just mentioned, you will also have to complete 9 sets of challenges that hold 10 specific challenges each. While a solid chunk of those challenges do indeed feel like they fulfill their purpose and make you more of an expert in the field you're trying to master, others are just a complete drag and serve seemingly no further purpose than to be tedious and stretch the process. For example, in the Herbalist Challenge 9, the game wants you to pick up every single herb that exists. Now while the challenge itself seems reasonable enough, it could not be timed worse. In the previous 8 challenges, you've learned to craft poison weapons, tonics, and already picked 15 different herbs. so at this point your character is more than familiar with the herbs. However, the game pretends for this challenge that you have not previously interacted with herb and you need to ride across the whole map and pick up each single herb again. I don't get why the game would ever put the challenges in this order, because it just doesn't make sense. If this was the first challenge to introduce you to the concept of herbalist, it would be much more natural and less tedious, because as you roam the map as a presumably new player, you would automatically fulfill the challenge rather than having to go out of your way and backtrack a lot. There are other examples like this one within the challenges, especially in the gambler challenges you often scratch your head and question their use. To summarize, it makes perfect sense for a challenge to confront you with difficult tasks if their nature is indeed related to the specific topic of the challenge, but it should be in an order that also makes sense. For robberies to get more and more difficult while you're doing the bandit challenges makes perfect sense, because the whole idea of the challenges is to make you feel more and more confident in the role of a bandit, and eventually get good enough to fulfill said challenges. There are many examples where this is done perfectly, but others just don't really make a lot of sense and are very tedious and time consuming. For the sake of not stretching this video to eternity, and because I think you got a taste of just how tedious Red Dead Redemption's full completion is, I'm going to summon the last few tasks that are insanely annoying into one. The exotic tasks, the hunting requests, the studying of all animals and the skinning of most of them. All these quests that are extremely tedious and time consuming basically boil down to one shared factor which is responsible for their length: animals. Animals are an essential part of the game in Red Dead Redemption 2. They are literally everywhere and are even the main objective of some quests. Hunting is introduced in the second or third mission of the game and stays consistently important, as proven by the whole lot of 5 achievements or trophies being influenced by them. The problem with animals in Red Dead Redemption 2, or rather with the missions that concern them, is the fact that they don't spawn on a consistent basis. To elaborate what I mean by this, let's look at the requirements for some of the hunting requests. Every hunting request you will pick up will ask you to find animals in perfect condition, hunt it down with a clean shot to not decrease the quality, and then bring it in. The problem with that is that some animals are extremely rare to spawn and furthermore are not guaranteed to spawn in perfect condition. A different issue that comes up when trying to finish the exotic quest is that the required animals do spawn, but they are just not enough to get what the quest is asking you to get in one go. Meaning that you will have to spend multiple in-game days, which is a lot of time in real life too, to wait for the animals to respawn and then fulfill the quest later on. A similar problem occurs with the 2 trophies that are dedicated to studying every animal and skin a good amount of them. Some animals just don't spawn, even if you're in the need of just these ones. When looking at guides that tell you how to solve this issue, it is often mentioned that you should reset the world and hope for the animal to spawn in the reset version of the map. The way to do this is basically to sleep for a long time. You need to make your character sleep for 72 hours in a row. Now, this is where it gets annoying again, because for the sake of realism, your character can only sleep a certain amount of hours before his energy is all filled up and he will refuse to go to bed again. The way to handle this issue is by manually saving the game, leaving the game into the main menu, then select the load you just made and reload the map. Then you go to sleep again until Arthur or John hits the sleep limit, and then you leave the main menu again, reload again, and finally, after you sleep 72 hours, the map is reset and new animals spawn or corpses of animals that you killed just disappear. So to demonstrate how long an average world reset takes on PlayStation 4 Pro, let's look at this extremely sped out gameplay. I know this will be less of an issue for PC users, but for people with the original PS4 it will even be worse. Now please keep in mind that all of this process is the solution for a problem that concerns different tasks that are all extremely tedious in themselves. So even the way to resolve an issue which you're confronted with because of one or multiple extremely tedious tasks is tedious in itself. To summarize all of what I just said, while animals are a beautiful part of this game and definitely belong to Red Dead Redemption 2, they are also a huge part of the frustration and grind that you'll encounter while trying to 100% this game. Rather than glitches making them difficult, like we've seen with the gold medal tasks, what is frustrating about animals is that the developers of Red Dead Redemption 2 seem to have purposely designed the game to make it extra annoying to get those last few birds you're missing for the last few achievements or challenges. One could argue that you can always look up which challenges you need for hunting requests and exotic missions and collect them in advance, since most of the things needed to finish both these missions can be kept within your bag without ever going bad. Looking up what is necessary for completion of endgame tasks very early on will also make the world reset mostly unnecessary. I would however argue that the fact that you need to look up tasks in greater detail before you actually have to do them in game defeats the purpose of those tasks. It should not be expected of a player to look up hunting request 5 while he's still at request 1 or hasn't even started any of them. Same goes for the exotic mission. It breaks the flow of the game immensely and feels like spoiling yourself, and it's just not a natural procedure while playing this, or any game for that matter. I've heard the same argument for the gold medal ranking in the missions. People often advise you to immediately go for the gold ranking, which would require you to look up what is necessary to do without ever having played the missions that you're doing, consequently skipping cutscenes and just removing a big part of the fun. Does that method shorten the time you invest in those challenges massively? Yes. Should it therefore be used and spoil the entire fun of playing the game as a new player who's experiencing the beautiful story of Red Dead Redemption 2 for the first time? Definitely not, at least in my opinion. With the most tedious parts of Red Dead Redemption 2 now mentioned, I hope you see why I advise many people not to invest the necessary 300 hours it takes to fully complete this game. It's not simply an issue of too many things to do, it's much more an issue of unnecessary tediosity that Rockstar willingly attached to those tasks, as if it was their whole plan to scare the players away from actively going for a full completion. One final thing I'd like to point out is that, in my opinion, you get very little reward for actually achieving the 100% completion. I'm not talking about in-game items or outfits, I much rather mean a message from the game to you, as you see it in many other games. Some games that require a tenth of the time to complete that Red Dead Redemption 2 does give you a heartfelt message or hint at your achievement by showing your secret ending to further complement your dedication. Whereas Red Dead Redemption 2 rewards your insane, unfaltering dedication towards it with, well, nothing. One task which really shows off what I mean to a painfully obvious degree is the 100% completion that the game asks you to do. Note that this is not the same as getting all the trophies or achievements for the game. It is one achievement in the game. If you do all of the tasks required for the 100% completion in random order, which is what most players probably do since the game generally just gives you as much freedom as it possibly can, you literally don't get anything after getting 100% completion in story mode. Well, besides the achievement or trophy popping up. If you, by sheer luck, because there's no indication whatsoever, end up going to Arthur's grave as the last and final task of the game, John speaks one short sentence. One.
Guess we're just about done, my friend.
All you get for 100% completion, investing approximately 200 to 250 hours into the game and showing unfaltering persistence and patience, is one half-assed sentence from John. The fact that visiting the graves of your fallen companions is a task necessary for the full completion and John not saying a single word towards any of the graves is a further slap in the face. So to rephrase what I mean, if you visit the graves in a random order, at a random point, and don't make Arthur's grave your last stop for the 100% completion, which you are absolutely free to do because the game does not hint at any order in which this should be done whatsoever, you don't get anything. And if you do go for Arthur's grave last, after doing all the tedious tasks you've been stuck with, you get a half-assed voice line and a theme song. It might seem nitpicky, but after investing an incredible amount of time into this game, Rockstar does not give you a decent goodbye or send-off whatsoever. Knowing that this is probably the last time you'll roam around in single player, since you've achieved almost every possible thing there is to do. Take this with a grain of salt, but I just expected more, because after inviting you to spend an obscene amount of time in the world they crafted, I felt like the least Rockstar could have done is send you off with a little reward for all your effort that is more than just a few words by John. It just doesn't feel right that the last thing you will see of this game, after all you've done, after all those amazing characters and situations you've met, are a few lousy words, rather than maybe a little cutscene or memory flashback to times where John and Arthur fooled around, or something small like that. That really could have been everything me or anyone else for that matter could have asked for, and it would have been extremely nice of Rockstar to do that. As you all know, Red Dead Redemption 2 has a single player mode which we basically talked about in this video, and it also does have an online part, which I want to talk about in another video. Let's just say I wasn't very pleased with that one either, but for very different reasons. And while a lot of things were annoying or inconsistent or tedious in single player mode, Red Dead Redemption Online leaves an even more bitter taste in my mouth thinking back to it. But again, there's time to talk about that in another video. Thank you so much for sticking around to the very end of the video. I'm still a very new YouTuber and streamer, and I would love to hear your feedback. So if you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you think I was spouting bullshit, feel free to leave me a dislike and subscribe anyway, to hate on future videos. All jokes aside, you taking time out of your day to watch this means everything to me, and I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments. I stream on Twitch from Wednesday to Saturday, so feel free to come say hi or see me in the next video here. See you next time, bye bye!